I think the only reason that they kept many people still in Guantanamo and many other secret prisons is politically motivated rather than legally sound motives. And it's very clearly very sad situation where you have politicians turning into judges and convicting people and having results as such. It's just very sad when politicians do the judges' work without having the due process and without having the proper training. And these are the results of such politically motivated actions.
Omar Deghayes, you were part of one of the most publicized hunger strikes at Guantanamo, but you eventually got out at the end of 2007, most of your time spent at Guantanamo. How did you get out?
That's why I'm trying to say it's most people who got out from Guantanamo, the majority of all of them, more than 90%, the people who left Guantanamo was not a decision made by court. It was more through political process and through different dealings between governments or between campaigning. I think the more people campaigned about a certain person, the more an embarrassment that person has become to the government, then he would be released. So because of that, I think many people who are still in Guantanamo are not in Guantanamo, nor are they a threat to any or dangerous to anyone's security. The only reason they kept there is because not enough campaigning has been done on their behalf. They are Yemenis who probably their parents wouldn't be able to have access to media, international media, or they didn't have a proper process of campaigning and so on. So I think mostly people were left Guantanamo because of political reasons more than anything that they've committed or not. Some even like Shakir Amir probably is because of what they've done inside Guantanamo rather than what they've done before Guantanamo, meaning that because in Guantanamo they became obviously angry because of the mistreatment, the sexual abuse and so on, and their reaction to that, how much they became popular because they've been helping, translating to other detainees, and because of that they kept in Guantanamo, not because they have any evidence against them before Guantanamo. So it's sad that somebody was to be isolated and locked up for 10 years. I mean, Shakir Amir, for example, hasn't seen his son since he was born. He hasn't even met him. Now his son is 10 years old, and they never met. And there are many, many other cases other than Shakir Amir's who are similar to that. And I think it's wrong politically, it's wrong legally, and it's also grossly immoral.
Let me ask you, you were accused of being a member of the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group, a group that would go on to help to overthrow Gaddafi and back the U.S.-supported National Transitional Council. Is this right?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I was accused of that, even though they had no evidence of being a member. And even so, even if I was a member of an organization which was politically motivated to fight against a dictator like Gaddafi, who everyone now in the world have supported the actions to get rid of, I don't see why that is to do anything with being in Guantanamo or being harmful to any United States government. I think let
me ask you about your eye, if you don't mind. One of your eyes is semi-closed. Why is that?
This was inside Guantanamo. That this is what happened. Is that we were, because of, it's a long story, but the end of it is that 5, 6 guards came into my cell and other people's cell, and they tried to stop us from campaigning like what's happening now, hunger strike, and from campaigning inside prison against certain embarrassing policies like sexual abuse policies that were committed by General Miller at the time. And they tried to stop us from doing anything like that. And what they did is that to threaten us and frighten us. After beating me in the cell, they dragged me outside the cell, and then one of the guards, while another officer was standing observing what was happening, he was trying to gouge my eyes out. And because one of my eyes, the right eye, had been I had a problem with it before, so I lost sight in both of my eyes, and then slowly I regained my sight in one of the eyes. The other eyes I completely gone worse than it has been. And they went to do the same thing to the next cell and the next cell and next cell, so to make an example of us, so to frighten everyone else from campaigning or from objecting to any policies. So that was the reason for that.
Morris Davis, you ultimately quit as your position as chief military prosecutor at Guantanamo. What are your thoughts as you listen to Omar Deghayes, one of the men who was held there while you were there? And did you know each other at Guantanamo while he was imprisoned and you were chief military prosecutor?
No, we never met, and his case was not one of the ones that was on our list of cases that we intended to prosecute. I think, listening, it's just reinforces that this has been an unfortunate and regrettable decade in our country's history, where we turned our back on what made us a great country, which was our respect for the law. And people have pandered to fear for whatever political purposes to get elected, to enhance executive power, whatever their motivation was. But we've had a decade of fear where we've become constrained and cowardly. I'd like to see us be the land of the free and the home of the brave again, and get back to American values and put this chapter behind us.
Even in 2005, when you were chief military prosecutor, you said you would use no confession that was gained through torture.
Right, similar to what the State Department said yesterday about the American who was convicted in the Iranian court, that his confession was coerced and shouldn't have been used. That was the same philosophy I was using at Guantanamo, that any evidence obtained by what we, the American government called enhanced interrogation, what most people call torture, has no place in an American court of law. And I think in many of the cases we had evidence independent of that was sufficient to establish guilt. But to use torture to gain intelligence and then also to turn around and use that as evidence in an American court is just not consistent with American principles.
And would you say categorically that prisoners were tortured at Guantanamo?
I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, yes, I would say that there was torture. Susan Crawford, again, Dick Cheney protege, said there was torture. John McCain has said waterboarding was torture, and we've admitted we've waterboarded. There have been at least 5 judges in federal court and military courts that have said detainees were tortured. And again, it's regrettable, the Obama administration's utter lack of leadership. We're a party to the Convention Against Torture that says there's no justification whatsoever for torture. There's a duty to investigate, to prosecute, and to provide an avenue for civil remedies. And the Obama administration has completely ignored their responsibility.
Colonel, very quickly, you were chief prosecutor under President Bush. You went on to work for the Congressional Research Service. You worked under President Obama, and you've been fired from there in the last few years for speaking out, or I should say writing out. Explain very quickly.
Yeah, as I said, I was very optimistic when President Obama took office that he was going to follow through on what he promised. I believed in hope and change. When he began to backpedal, I wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal that they said it was a double standard what we were doing, and I got my termination notice the next day. So it was disappointing. I spent 25 years defending the Constitution, and then to be told that it didn't apply to me. We have free speech for everyone that has nothing to say. But if you have an opinion, then it's speak at your own peril. And so I was fired for expressing an opinion.
Morris Davis, I want to thank you for being with us. Retired Air Force Colonel, resigned as former chief military prosecutor at Guantanamo in 2007. Back in London, I wanted to find out, Omar Deghayes, and then I'll turn to Michael Ratner, about the prisoner support group you have formed in London and what is happening today in London, the press conference you have just held. You are there with other prisoners, an organization called Caged Prisoners, other prisoners like Mozambique, who we've interviewed on Democracy Now! People can see the interviews at democracynow.org, as well as others who are there.
Yeah, there's a program as Guantanamo Caged Prisoners have done those programs to bring more attention to what it's been a decade, people being locked up without any charges, and we fear that people have forgotten about those people locked up. So we've done a press conference, and tomorrow there's an evening where they're going to show a film about the people who died inside Guantanamo, and we have a couple of people who were locked up in Guantanamo to speak. And we're trying to bring as much attention to the plight of people who are still left in Guantanamo. So this is what's happening in London. Probably Michael Ratner will be able also to speak more.
Omar, you have sued the British government and the British intelligence services, along with other former Guantanamo prisoners. Also at the event today, Sami Haj, who is the former journalist for Al Jazeera, who was detained at Guantanamo for many years, interrogated repeatedly, questioned about the higher-ups at Al Jazeera. Although you're suing the British...
in the press conference he had in London. And
although you're suing the British government, I wanted to ask Omar if you have a message for President Obama.
I just hope that, as he has promised, when he came to the presidency, he promised to close Guantanamo. Clearly, he said in clear terms that within 1 year that Guantanamo would be closed. And I wish that he will be able to still do the pledge that he promised to the people that brought him to power. His policies towards the Middle East recently have been a lot better than his policies towards Guantanamo. So we hope that he will be able to implement his promises and bring justice to the people who deserve justice.
And very